Well, they contain 12 million files that were leaked from 14 companies. And these companies offer corporate services in offshore jurisdictions. The papers provide a large window into how these service providers help the rich and the famous. An offshore jurisdiction is one with low taxes, few regulations, and opaque disclosure laws. Not all offshore jurisdictions, if you're an American, are technically offshore. They're not in the stereotypical island paradises. New York and Delaware, and now even South Dakota, can be considered offshore jurisdictions. London is also a major offshore jurisdiction, especially when it comes to real estate. The Pandora Papers have revealed what has long been suspected by experts in the anti-money laundering and anti-corruption field, but could never be confirmed. But what has now been confirmed is just the amount of money we're talking about is in the trillions of dollars. There are a vast number of people using these offshore jurisdictions to hide their wealth, and that the schemes and arrangements required to hide this wealth are quite complex and require the expertise of a small army of experts, from lawyers to accountants to financial advisors and others. First, it's important to understand that not all money held in these offshore jurisdictions is being held illegally. Some of these arrangements and schemes are legal in those jurisdictions, and possibly even legal in the jurisdiction of your home country. However, even if they are technically legal, they certainly violate our widely held norms of ethics, and in almost all cases, undermine what could be called to be in the public interest. In the world's poorest countries, $200 billion a year is lost because of money held in these offshore jurisdictions. This is money that could have been used to build schools, for healthcare, to build infrastructure, and to provide other essential public goods and services. A vast amount of the money held in these offshore jurisdictions comes from corrupt politicians and other public officials who have obtained vast sums of money through corruption and corrupt schemes. So these arrangements make it much easier for them to hide their money, thereby providing a greater incentive to engage in corrupt schemes, because the risk of being caught now is very, very small. Second is the use of offshore jurisdictions by organized crime groups. They use these jurisdictions not only to hide their money, but also they use the money deposited there to fund their continuing criminal operations. One could add, finally, there is some evidence that certain terrorist groups or other extremist groups are using offshore jurisdictions to fund their operations. Reducing substantially the amount of money deposited in these offshore jurisdictions is a more reasonable goal. Elimination is impossible largely for one reason, something called sovereignty. Countries are free to design their financial and corporate institutions as they see fit. Countries with sovereignty are free to write their laws regarding financial institutions and corporations as they see fit. So in that regard, there's some a limit on what can be done. That said, there are several things that we can do here in the United States to try and curb the use of offshore jurisdictions. A bill was just introduced in Congress, actually on October 6, 2001, called the Enablers Act. So what the Enablers Act would do is close many loopholes that are used by lawyers and accountants and antiquities dealers and arts dealers and public relations firms to hide the sources of the funds of their clients.